Saquon Barkley is clearly the fantasy MVP, but he's also making a case to be the NFL MVP this season. We dig into and react the best, worst, and most shocking fantasy performances of Week 12 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We are here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, but I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can enjoy the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we have to start with the best performances of the week. We'll obviously get into the guys who disappointed us and then start to dig into the waiver wire, but Saquon Barkley. I mean, this guy is just a beast. He puts up 44.2 fantasy points in half PPR leagues last night. It has 302 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns, but he's just been a beast all season long.
Yeah, they're getting their money's worth for sure. And he's been running with conviction this season. You kind of feel slighted with the chip on the shoulder with the Giants. That was evident when he played the Giants. And he wants to prove that he's the best running back in the league once again. He was that for a brief period of time as a rookie before he had all those injuries and the Giants kind of stunk and didn't help him. Now he's got a great offensive line. He's got a great quarterback who takes pressure off him because he can run. And now what's happened as well is the Eagles always seem to have someone out between A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. Someone seems to always be hurt and not available. This week it was Smith. Last few weeks it's been Goedert. A.J. Brown early this season. So Saquon Barkley is filling the void of them in the passing game. He's carrying the workload here in the rushing attack, we know. The only thing missing was his touchdowns because Jalen Hurts has to score every single short yardage situation. But you know how Saquon Barkley made that not happen? He scored on long touchdowns. So that's how you do it. And he's a primetime player as well, so you put him under the lights. Guess what was happening this week? Derrick Henry is on the other side for the Ravens. It's going to be a clash of the two best running back signings of the offseason. So he's going to be motivated. He's going to finish strong. I'll say the one thing, we'll talk about it later, but he did get a little bit of an injury issue in the middle of the game early. There was some concern about it, but he got up. So just keep that in mind. This workload is pretty heavy, and he can break down. And so just be prepared to insure him with Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, I mean, his upcoming schedule, he does get the Ravens and the Steelers in 2 of the next 3 weeks, but and then the Panthers in between. Oh my gosh, he's going to destroy them. But he's actually on pace to beat the record for most rushing yards in a season. We'll see if he does it. We'll see if he's the MVP at the end of the year. I feel like no quarterback is like a clear-cut MVP candidate as of right now. Now, Josh Jacobs puts up 3 touchdowns against the 49ers yesterday. He's been really, really good for fantasy. He scored at least 20 fantasy points, actually at least 21 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's getting a ton of volume, and he's starting to score touchdowns, which he was not doing for the first 7 weeks of the season. He has a couple hard matchups against the Dolphins and Lions coming up, but with his workload and touchdowns, he's a great play.
The moral of the story, folks, if a back was special for a bad team, and when he's going to a good team in free agency in his prime, he's going to do big things. And we see this with Henry. We see this with Barkley. We've seen this now with Jacobs. All these guys, I mean, we're talking about scrimmage champions, rushing champions. These were guys at the top of their game. And we saw that with Christian McCaffrey, right? He went from the bad Panthers to the 49ers. All of a sudden, he stays healthy for all the games, has a monster season. So, again, pay attention whenever this happens because that back is someone you want to get. They run with a little bit more juice and trying to prove people wrong. And if they go to a great system, such as Green Bay or Baltimore or Philadelphia, just take it. Just go after that guy. So that's what we learned this year. Jacobs and Barkley should have gone much higher over some of those guys we took a lot earlier, such as Jonathan Taylor. They're just in better teams, right? And better teams that win, run more, and have success, get that running back next year, whoever it is.
And now one guy who's a rookie, but a big favorite of ours, Bucky Irving.
Oh, yeah.
He's officially like, it's not so much he's taking over the backfield because White's still getting his Sean Tucker stolen touchdown and then almost another, but fumbled the ball at the goal line. But Bucky Irving still has 12 carries, 87 yards, a touchdown. But the key here is he got 6 receptions, 64 yards. It seems like they're now moving on to Irving also as their pass catching back and not just White. And he's been so good on the ground, so efficient. I just think Bucky Irving has really shined, and he's going to continue to shine. He gets the Panthers and the Raiders the next 2 weeks. Bucky Irving, it could be a league winner.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Buccaneers, they've much improved with their run blocking, and that's why they're able to support White and Irving. We were groaning about it. Oh, no, it's a three-headed monster. And Sean Tucker, like, people were probably throwing up their arms to say, why is he scoring the first touchdown of the game when they have White and Irving? So both of those guys could have had bigger games, right? And this one is a really good matchup. There's no doubt about it. They're playing the Giants, but they have a great matchup this week. It's against the Panthers. So this should continue this week for both backs. I love them. And Irving, again, I just like the way he runs. He just runs with a lot of juice, conviction, and he's also a very good receiving back, as we've seen. So it's kind of like the better version of Ray Davis. Like, I've seen some flashes of Ray Davis, but I think Irving is a little bit better because he's got the power, a little bit better so far production-wise with the receiving as well.
The entire Dolphins offense, minus Tyreek Hill, had a good day. Tua throws for 4 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, scores 28-9 fantasy points against the Patriots. Jalen Waddle, of course, breaks out after everyone gives up on him. 144 yards and a touchdown. Jonnu Smith, 87 yards and a touchdown, 11 targets, a team high. And Devin Achane didn't do much on the ground, but scores 2 receiving touchdowns. I will say, Tua's been at home these last 2 weeks. He's been really good for fantasy. He has to go at Green Bay this week on Thanksgiving night. I don't really want to play him on the road, so I'm not going to be chasing his points this week. But anytime he's at home, I think Tua will be a good start. He gets the Jets in a couple weeks at home. And then even like at Houston, I think it's fine as long as it's not a cold game. And that will be in a dome. So, but Tua on the road in the cold, I'm not really going to be down for. But Jonnu Smith has been so good too. So I think you keep rolling with Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to make a couple points here. Number one, they've had a very soft schedule in terms of facing really weak defenses the past 3 weeks. That's why they've crept back into the conversation, right? When you face the Rams, Raiders, Patriots in 3 weeks, you're going to be able to do whatever you want offensively. The other thing that's happening here is everyone is playing the Dolphins in a very similar way. They're trying to take away the big play, whether it's a Devin Achane break free into the open field or a Tyreek Hill home run. They're just trying to avoid that. So what's happened? The Dolphins have done a good job of adjusting. We're going to throw shorter to Achane. We're going to throw to Jalen Waddle, who randomly resurfaced for a big first half in this game. So it was weird to see this pivot, but this is finally some good coaching by Mike McDaniel. He didn't know how to coach when he didn't have Tua in there, but I guess Tua changes things. So they want to get the ball out quickly from Tua's hands so he doesn't take the hits. So that means shorter passes. If people are playing them deep and trying to do zone coverage, that's what they're going to do. So the Packers matchup will be very interesting. I think, again, he's going to talk about how the cold weather thing is not real for the Dolphins offense, but until we see otherwise, and it's not just the cold weather, right? The Packers defense is pretty good in a lot of areas. So it'll be interesting to see what you get from Tua this week. But yeah, I'm going to fade him pretty hard this week. I'm not going to chase what we just saw the past 3 weeks for this offense overall.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll get right back on them as soon as they're home. But on a away game in the cold, it's going to be hard to trust them. Now, the Bears, I don't know. They are all over the place, right? But they have a good offensive performance. They finally showed up towards the end of that game. But DJ Moore and Keenan Allen both finished as top 5 wide receivers in scoring so far in the week. Caleb Williams has 27 fantasy points, 4th among quarterbacks. Sam Darnold in that same game, 5th among quarterbacks with fantasy scoring. Jordan Addison has a big game. TJ Hawkinson had a big game for the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, though, disappeared. We know who to play on the Vikings side, but let's hit on the Bears side here. Are you still going to trust them? They play at Detroit this week on Thanksgiving. I'm not. There's no Caleb Williams. There's no Keenan Allen going to be in my lineup. There's no Cole Kmet. Maybe DJ Moore, and that's about as far as I go. And DeAndre Swift, maybe. Actually, probably not Swift either because the Lions are so good against the run.
Yeah, the Bears, Michelle, I will disclose this. Over the course of my game picking career. The Bears have been always the hardest team to pick. Now they've become the hardest team to figure out in fantasy. Like, I am just so confused what the offensive identity of this team is. Really am. Because I thought, okay, Rhamondre, they're going to open it up and throw it downfield. And then back come Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen out of nowhere. They were not relevant for multiple weeks. They pop up here. It doesn't matter because we had Thomas Brown is the new offensive coordinator. Their offenses look different from week to week. And go figure. And the other thing is, you don't know when they're going to explode. Like the Vikings, this is when they explode. And Caleb Williams has his best game overall in terms of rushing and throwing the ball up to these guys. So I don't know what you're going to get from them in Detroit this week. I have no idea. If you can guess, the one thing I know they won't do is run the ball. So we'll see. Those deep shots are not going to come for Caleb Williams. So it might be a lot more of Allen, but the Lions have been very good against the tight end, so I'm not sure Kmet's going to get going. Is DJ Moore going to be motivated? I have no idea. So good luck figuring out which Bears that you can totally trust, because I don't think there's any. Maybe with DeAndre Swift because he gets the touches, but that's about it for me.
Yeah, the Detroit's actually like the number one defense in the league since week 7, since their bye. Actually since week 6. So I'm not chasing these points from the Bears. 2 more guys to hit on that had huge weeks. Cortland Sutton, he has 2 receiving touchdowns, 8 receptions, 97 yards. He's been highly targeted, and he's been a really solid fantasy scorer now for like half the last 6 games or so. So he gets to play the Browns at home this week. Bo Nix is better at home. I expect Cortland Sutton to be great. You play Cortland Sutton, and then Jakobi Meyers, he's the only thing left with the Raiders, and he gets, well, and Brock Bowers, of course, but 15 targets, 10 receptions, 121 yards. It's going to be up and down for Meyers. There's not going to be many scoring opportunities, but he is a playable wide receiver 3 type flex play.
Yeah, I mean, interesting shootout also that developed. I didn't expect that to also happen there with the Raiders and Broncos going a little bit back and forth, not as quite as high scoring as the Bears Vikings. But when you look at that, yeah, I mean, this is who's left. I mean, Meyers and Bowers, Cortland Sutton. You're seeing a little bit of Bailey too, the rookie. He's basically the second receiver now behind Sutton. These are the top targets for Bo Nix. You've seen these rookie quarterbacks like Caleb Williams distributing well, Bo Nix doing it. Of course, Jane Daniels had another big game because he trusted more guys. He threw to Zach Ertz and Noah Brown and some of these other guys as well. So again, if these rookie quarterbacks are going to facilitate people, we love it, right? We want more people viable in fantasy, and you've definitely seen that with Nix as well, throwing to Sutton and Vele and just these random guys that have come through. And Meyers, look, I don't know. It seems like one of these guys can do something, Meyers or Bowers. The quarterback situation stinks. Now Gardner Minshew's hurt. I don't know what Hayden O'Connell's status is here. Maybe we'll say Daniel Jones in Las Vegas. I don't know what's going to happen here, but they need someone to start. And I don't know if I can feel good if Desmond Ridder has to be the guy here.
No, not at all. That poor Raiders teams, poor Raiders fans.
Yeah.
Now, happy fans are the Lions, but you were not happy if you played Jared Goff or Sam Laporta. Not so happy about Amon-Ra St. Brown. We will dig into the most disappointing performances right after we take a quick break. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses. Some courses that you can take that are available: Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/LockedOnNFL. Locked On, not NFL, just Locked On to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. Again, that's hillsdale.com. If I mess up this link one more time, I'm so sorry. Hillsdale.edu/LockedOn to register. Hillsdale.edu/LockedOn.
This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and I'll give you a minute why you should join Prize Picks, because it is the number one daily fantasy game that getting a lot of subscribers here, 10 million members, and billions of dollars in award and winnings. It's the best daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long only on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can go in and quickly cash out with your money in as easy as 15 minutes. And when you want to get in there, they offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season, whatever sport you're playing. Check it out. Again, it's prizepicks.com. There's all kinds of good stuff coming up. Thanksgiving is here, so go for it. And there's a Thanksgiving free square. Tyreek Hill, 0.5 receiving yards. And you can get that against the Packers. You will get that Prize Picks as part of your grouping there. So check it out only at prizepicks.com. Prizepicks.com. Run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show and look at the disappointing performances. We got into the positive energy first, so let's start with the Lions. Here's the rub on Jared Goff. I'm just going to quickly intro this. He needs the running game to be successful in the passing game. But sometimes the running game is too good, and then he's not going to do anything, and that's what I think happened in Indianapolis this week.
Yeah, I mean, they just stole the touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
It was just Jahmyr Gibbs gets 2 rushing touchdowns. David Montgomery gets 1. Montgomery did leave that game early, but luckily he got the touchdown. It does seem like he's going to be fine. It was a shoulder injury. He did not return, but he said he could have. Dan Campbell didn't want him to in that game. He said, just like, you'll be fine for next week. Like, come back next week. We don't need you. So it sounds like he's going to be good for the Thanksgiving game. It's at home, right? Jared Goff does better at home. It's against the Bears, who just gave up 30 points to the Vikings. I don't love it, but he's a possible option. I mean, it really was just he got all the rushing touchdowns taken away from him.
Yeah, and it comes down to it is he going to get the touchdowns? And the Colts hung in there, right? They kind of played a little bit to contain the big plays, and they did a good job, really, on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that kind of dictates everything. How do they contain St. Brown and Laporta? They did decent jobs. I mean, Jameson Williams had a few big plays, but not to get in the end zone. So, yeah, Jared Goff is going to have these type of games because the Lions are just too darn good now. That's what's happening. You talked about their defense. They're running all over teams. Why would they want to put Jared Goff to chuck the ball?
They didn't need to throw.
Even in his best fantasy games, he's not doing it, right? I mean, it's still limited volume. So he really is I hate to say a touchdown dependent quarterback, but he kind of is, and also running game dependent quarterback. So if you're like, oh, this team can stop the run, they're going to throw a ton. That's not good for Jared Goff. We saw that against the Texans, right? So I don't know, like you could see him go 290 and 0 against the Bears. It would not surprise me. Or he could go 197 and like 4 TDs. Either one could happen. So you just have to know that going in with Goff. And you're right, playing him at home, just a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. And the Bears you can definitely run on. But so maybe that will be good. It's just all going to come down to luck with the touchdowns. Yeah. And Gibbs and Monty are just so good at scoring touchdowns. Now, Kyler Murray disappoints in this game as well as Marvin Harrison Jr. I had hoped that Marvin Harrison, coming off the bye, could start to get it done. He had scored a touchdown in 2 of the 3 previous games before the bye. Now he gets 6 targets, 3 receptions, 47 yards. They really couldn't get anything going with this offense against the Seahawks. Maybe the Seahawks defense did somehow improve just from their bye week. But Murray has just been up and down this year. If you want to get the big games, you're going to have to play him every week. And he gets the Vikings this week, who Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen all just destroyed. So you just keep playing Kyler Murray. Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know. Trey McBride had a great game. That's about it.
Yeah. And the game's on the road. So I don't know. The Cardinals have seemed to just be a better overall team, defensively, offensively at home. Then they forget how to do everything when they leave the desert and go somewhere else. So I don't know. It's just a weird team. And you thought the matchup was good enough. I mean, it was supposed to be a pick 'em. They're supposed to be back and forth, evenly matched teams. Cardinals and Vikings are going to be very interesting this week. I mean, the Vikings defense, I mean, they can force the turnovers, and that's kind of what Seattle did, like they had the pressure against Kyler Murray. He's decent against the blitz because he can run and get the single coverage, but I don't know if I would totally trust him, especially when he's not running, right? You're really dependent on him getting it done with the TD. So maybe he's a lot like Jared Goff. Play him in a good matchup where they can run at home, but avoid him maybe if they can't run on the road, and they're definitely not a playable person there.
We have to figure out
Oh,
where we're going to rank Christian McCaffrey moving
gosh.
forward. He scores 6.3 fantasy points in this game against the Packers. 11 carries, 31 yards, 3 receptions, 37 yards, lost a fumble. He still doesn't have a touchdown in any of his 3 games back. They play Buffalo this week. Now, if Brock Purdy's not back and Trent Williams isn't back, it's not going to be pretty for this 49ers offense. And we saw, Brandon Allen wasn't finding him as much in the receiving game. He needs Purdy back. And this 49ers offense needs, I don't know, they're a disaster.
Yeah, it seems like every few years they have this injury-riddled mess, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they lost Brandon Ayuk early. Okay, they survived that a little bit. Then you had George Kittle randomly miss a game. They struggled with that. And then you have Brock Purdy, like slowly developing injury that we didn't expect. And then, oh, great. They have Brandon Allen on the road. And Allen wasn't terrible, but they just can't get anything done. Like they don't have that field stretcher in Ayuk, so they don't have him consistently. Now, Juwan Jennings is doing his best to pick up the pace in the passing game, but it's hard. So the only hope for McCaffrey this week is the Bills have been very bad in covering running backs. So they got to dump it off a lot and hope that McCaffrey can get going. But that was pretty bad. Didn't they have like 4 rushing yards in the first half on 3 carries or something ridiculous? I don't know. Did they forget how to run their offense without their key players? I don't know. It's very disturbing, but we definitely cannot put McCaffrey in 1.1 anymore.
No, he's going to have to be more as an RB2 with upside. Jonathan Taylor shouldn't even be listed, in the teens anymore in my rankings. I actually put him down before Sunday's game. I had him as my running back 15. I moved him down a bit from where I had him at like 12. And that wasn't even close enough. He scores 3.5 fantasy points. 3.5. He has 11 carries for 35 yards. He's just not involved in the passing game either. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 8. He has had fewer than 8 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. What are you doing with Jonathan Taylor?
Well, there's a little bit of hope this week, right? The matchup is a little bit better against the Patriots, who just gave up a couple touchdowns to Devin Achane.
Yeah, but that was through the air. He's not going to get him through the air.
But at least they're not going to get a big lead, right? That's the problem. Like as soon as the Colts go down, it's over for Jonathan Taylor because I don't know why. He was a good receiver early in his career. Then they had the Nyheim Hines situation where they didn't throw to him as much, but I do not get when they're trailing to take one of your best players off the field. I don't care. Okay, he's a better power back, but he's still a capable receiver. I think he's got to be like, what the heck is going on? Like, I mean, he's not getting the workload, right? You have to give him more than 11 carries. And I'm watching Jahmyr Gibbs and Taylor. I had them in a lot of fantasy leagues together. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs is moving at the speed of light, and they're giving him all this opportunity. And then you have Jonathan Taylor, blah, blah, let's get 3 yards, and, and that's it, So I don't know. But maybe the Patriots, maybe an exploitable defense this week. I'm going to hold out some hope, but man, it's been bad. And Shane Steichen has really not done a good job with that offense this year at all.
No, yeah. And I really like Shane Steichen. I thought he was going to figure this out with Anthony Richardson coming into this year because of what he's done with Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. That has not been the case at all. 2 really annoying backfields. I mean, one, let's just start Javonte Williams here. Just can't play him. I don't care. I just stop with Javonte Williams. Anytime he's going to give you a good game, he's going to be on your bench or waivers because people gave up on him. And then anytime you finally trust him, he's going to stink. 8 carries for negative 2 yards.
He's the Chicago Bears of individual players. You don't know what you're going to get.
8 carries for negative 2 yards.
What did he do? He had a big game, and then Sean Payton must be the most fickle guy. Like he must be like, you missed half a block in practice this week or whatever, so you're out. And then they just he's just toying with us, and it's annoying. It's much like what we used to see back in the day with Pierre Thomas and Reggie Bush. It was so annoying, and he's doing it with us again. So I don't know. You go and run to go play Audric Estime or McLaughlin, and you're going to get nothing. So, and then Williams will suddenly resurface. So I'm done. I cannot trust this Broncos backfield ever again while Sean Payton's the coach.
Never again. And then the Patriots backfield is also annoying. I mean, Rhamondre Stevenson was getting 20 touches a game over the last month, and then he gets 8 touches this game, 13 rushing yards. I mean, he was highly inefficient, and they were losing fast. 0 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns against the Dolphins. I think that's the most irritating part about him this year. He's just not being used as a receiver like he was in prior years. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, then he's cooked. I guess against the Colts, he could score a touchdown. I mean, it's just an inconsistent player, but he's still going to be a playable guy in that matchup against the Colts next week.
Yeah, let's hope both backs. Maybe it's a get well game. Maybe they both need to play a bad team for once and just go after each other and give an opportunity. But yeah, that's another very similar situation. Like the usage is very head scratching on Stevenson, like it is with Taylor.
And one last guy, I don't think we really need to talk about him. Joe Mixon struggled against the Titans, 14 carries, 22 yards, 5 receptions, 23 yards, no touchdowns. He'll be fine. He's going to bounce back. It was a tough matchup. He gets the Jaguars next week.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
We're right back into the top 3.
Yeah.
We are going to start on waiver wires because tomorrow with Thanksgiving, we're going to actually start our positional rankings. So we're going to give you a little heads up on who you should pick up on the waiver wire, some guys out there to finish today's show. But first, we need to take a quick break. Tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets during NFL games all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. This app is very, very user-friendly, which I appreciate. And they just make any, placing a bet on FanDuel can make any game fun. You don't really need to make tonight's game fun. It should be fun with the Chargers versus the Ravens. But if you have a feeling that one team's going to beat the other, the Ravens right now are 2.5-point favorites on the road. I kind of like that Chargers plus 2.5. Go place that bet and enjoy the game even more tonight. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I was very excited during the Titans game until they beat the Texans. I wanted the Texans to win, but Will Levis had a really solid fantasy week. That interception hurt him a little bit near the end of the game. And then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, a touchdown. Like we said, he scores a touchdown every single week. He only had 2 receptions, but one of them was a 38-yard touchdown. These two and this team, Calvin Ridley also had a good game, 5 for 93. Tony Pollard, great game, 119 rushing yards and a touchdown. They get the Commanders, the Jaguars, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Jaguars to finish up their fantasy schedule. I think these 2 guys should be picked up, Will Levis and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I thought I would see some of this Titans offense early in the season. I was just a little bit ahead, or I was a little bit overly optimistic that they would put it all together, but Will Levis was also hurt. They were trying to get everyone on the field together. They had to figure out what to do with DeAndre Hopkins. So once they had their core, and we also had a Chigakonkwo sighting for a score in this one. So when you had that, I thought, okay, with Chigakonkwo, Calvin Ridley, and before it was Hopkins, but now I'm looking at Westbrook-Ikhine in that mix, and Tony Pollard. And when they have Tyjae Spears, I thought these playmakers are not too bad, right? And this offensive line, they've tried to improve it. So now you're kind of seeing that, maybe getting some time in Brian Callahan's offense, being on the field. Maybe Will Levis is a keeper for year 3 now all of a sudden. So I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. Don't discount the Titans. I think they'll be spoilers in a lot of weeks going forward. The Commanders, again, they were pretty vulnerable in pass defense this week, and that could be a high volume game for Will Levis. So I do love that call by you, and I think everyone just pay attention. Just don't write off people because their name or team, right? Just treat everyone what they're doing instead of what their name is on the back or what team they play for.
Well, one name that does not get you excited, and that name's Jeremy McNichols. He might be a big waiver wire ad this week. So Austin Eckler leads the game late this last week with a concussion. Now, that's not the reason why he was bad in the game. He was just bad in the game. 9 carries, 22 yards, only had 2 receptions for 2 yards. Not at all what I thought they were going to do against the Cowboys. Brian Robinson Jr. gets injured very, very early in the game with an ankle injury. He returns, but then he doesn't return after halftime. So clearly he wasn't doing well. So we'll see on those 2 guys if they're able to go this week. If not, Jeremy McNichols is going to get a decent amount of work. The only issue is it's against the Titans, who Joe Mixon just couldn't run against. They're very, very, very hard run defense.
Yeah, if McNichols starts, we saw that with Amir Abdullah, right? If it's the guy getting the touches, hey, he has a chance to do something, right? You just fall into the end zone once, and you've got 6 points in fantasy, and he's a flex play, right? So just has to do a little bit more to do that. So just watch out for McNichols. Abdullah, just check. I mean, we have to see a couple things, right? The matchup is brutal against the Chiefs on Black Friday, so keep that in mind. But the other thing is, I don't know what Alexander Madison's Amir Wade exactly prognosis is, so you got to check. And one of those guys is back and it almost cancels everybody. So watch out. I mentioned Kenneth Gainwell as well, someone you need to pick up. He did look good behind Saquon Barkley, and I think he'd be fantastic if Barkley went down. So those are some backs you could look at early. Now, tight end, Michelle, we got to talk about this. Noah Gray doubled the touchdown total of Travis Kelce in 2 games, 2 and 2. What's going on here? Is Kelce being transitioned, phased out? What's going on?
I don't know. I thought he was going to be, I mean, he got the yards against the Panthers. He did all right. But the touchdowns for Travis Kelce, they're just all going to Noah Gray. Every time you see a pass to, a big white dude, right? You're like, oh, Kelce in the end zone. And then it's Noah Gray. And you're like, no.
That's 7's a 3. That's 7's a 3.
Yeah. That happened 4 times over the last 2 weeks. 2
Yeah.
touchdowns in each of these games. I don't know. I mean, I guess Noah Gray is maybe a playable guy because of the touchdowns. It's not like he's getting a ton of targets. This was his first game with more than 25 receiving yards since week 7. So you really are playing him just for the touchdown hope. But I mean, I guess there's worse options out there. But what about Luke Schoonmaker for the Cowboys? I mean, if Jake Ferguson's going to keep missing time, he's had 50 receiving yards each of the 2 games that Ferguson's missed. He brought down a touchdown this last week. I mean, he's definitely a big option there if Jake Ferguson has to continue to miss time.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Schoonmaker, maybe too much on Friday's show last week, but it paid off. I played him in the DFS lineup. I was very happy about that. He scored a touchdown. I played him in a regular lineup, and I was like struggling at tight end because I've been playing Dalton Kincaid. So I'll give Schoonmaker a shot. They'll probably throw to the tight end a lot. And Cooper Rush seemed to like have a little bit better chemistry with him, probably because they're both backups, right? Than we had with Jake Ferguson. So that's something sneaky thing to keep in mind. Backups usually work well with other backups because they throw to them in practice or whatever. So that was definitely in play for Schoonmaker against the Commanders. So we'll see. I mean, it's a tough matchup against the Giants. They allow not a lot to the tight end, but mainly because they allow so much in the running game and to wide receivers. But Cooper Rush is definitely targeting him a lot with CeeDee Lamb. So short week, you don't expect, I don't think, Ferguson to be cleared. So I think Schoonmaker at least one more week. But if he has another big week, then they have to consider him for more playing time.
Yeah, that might not be good for Jake Ferguson in the future. There are some good wide receiver options still out there. Xavier Legette, I mean, it's not like he had a huge week, but he gets a nice matchup this week against the Buccaneers. He is an option. I mean, he's solid, right? That's what it keeps happening. It's not like he's had this huge week yet, but against the Chiefs, a harder matchup, still got 4 receptions, 56 yards. Like, he could have a big game against the Buccaneers. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, check your waivers because he was on a bye. So maybe people didn't see him and want to pick him up, or maybe they dropped him. But 2 huge games before the bye. He has that deep threat role with Derek Carr and nice matchups. Rams, Giants, Commanders coming off the bye. MVS would be my number 1 pickup if he's out there.
Yeah, if he's out there, that's a very good high upside pickup, obviously, because he can score multiple touchdowns and stretch the field. Now, if you're looking for some lower end PPR options, Devon Bailey's had a couple good games in a row. Yep. He's essentially the number 2, also the slot receiver for the Broncos, and they throw to him quite a bit after Cortland Sutton. And Damari Douglas, if you look, I think there were 3 straight games where he had 7 points, and then he went to 8 and 9. Like, if you just need some cheapy, deep league flex, get some guy to catch 6 balls for 50 to 70 yards, Demario Douglas is your guy. They're pretty consistent there. It's basically going through Hunter Henry and him and a little bit of Austin Hooper. So that's kind of where the offense is going with Drake May. So these sneaky guys that are the PPR only type, or even half maybe for stretching, but there are some, this is what PPR does. Sometimes it allows these guys to have a little bit more value than we didn't think they would have.
Yeah, Devon Bailey is a really good option too. I'm happy you brought him up because they get a nice matchup. They're back at home, and Bro Nix is better at home, and they get to play against the Browns. That's going to be a good matchup for them. So Bailey is definitely going to be in consideration for a really solid flex play this week. That's going to do it for today's episode. We want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Again, we're going to become tomorrow, where normally we do a full waiver wire show. We're not going to do that tomorrow. We're going to start our running back and quarterback rankings and then get to our wide receiver and tight end rankings on Wednesday to get you prepped for those Thanksgiving games. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.